back to another week of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, where we go behind the lens and below the line with the movers and shakers, those film and TV makers, those producers, directors, writers, actors, cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, film editors, sound mixers, VFX gurus, composers, stunt coordinators, you name it, and I talk to them. And you know I do a lot of talking. So we're doing some great talking today. It's a terrific show for you, as you're about to hear from two directors whose work I am a huge admirer of and have been for years. Both of whom I love chatting with, and each with a new film out. Neil Marshall joins me to discuss his new psychological erotic thriller, Compulsion, while Brandon Slagle is back with me for the 5th or 6th time, talking about his latest, the powerhouse martial arts action sci-fi film, Affinity. First up, we've got Brandon Slagle discussing his latest film, Affinity. I always love chatting with Brandon, and as he correctly remembered and reminded me, our first interview for Frost was more than 90 minutes long. Sadly, the publicist for this interview didn't schedule us with nearly enough time, but Brandon and I always manage to work with what we've got. Since then, we've chatted about The Flood, Breakout, which is superb, Battle for Saipan, and more. But what excites me today is that we're talking about Affinity, which pushes Brandon's skills into a genre blend and shows us a completely different and wonderful side of his talents. Set and shot in Bangkok, Thailand, Affinity stars Chilean martial arts star Marko Zaror as Bruno, an ex-SEAL struggling with PTSD. He lives a life in fear of his demons until one day when he discovers a beautiful woman named Athena with no past of her own. Together they begin to build a life, but when she disappears, Bruno must return to his violent past if he's going to save her from a shocking conspiracy. Directed by Brandon and written by Gina Aguad, Christopher M. Don, Liam O'Neill, and Marko Zaror, with the story by Marko as well. Affinity stars Marko, Louis Mandylor, who is a long-time and frequent collaborator of Brandon's, Brooke Entz, and Jane Moreau. And I must tell you, this story has been a passion project of Marko's for years. So I'm thrilled that it's being done, that he's seeing it get made. As to be expected in a Brandon Slagle film, the action is fast-paced, intense, riveting. But what makes this film differ from his prior works is this action sci-fi genre blend, which is something Marko is passionate about, and the emotional poignancy of the story, not to mention his superb use of color and vibrancy in the film's visual tonal bandwidth. If you've seen Brandon's prior films, particularly something like Battle for Saipan, the color palette, you're in a jungle. The jungle has in a military situation, it's going to have pretty much a singular visual tonal bandwidth, color bandwidth. So here, Brandon really gets to expand his own horizons and really play with the vibrancy and color that Bangkok has to offer. Now, as we dive in, you're going to hear us, as usual, talk about the visual grammar and Brandon's work with his cinematographer, Nicolo de la Ferrer, who is always fantastic with lighting and lensing. Some of you may recognize Nico's name, as he was also the DP on Christian Sesma's shark film, Into the Deep, which Christian and I discussed, as well as editor Ernesto Diaz Espinosa, who directed and edited the action-packed martial arts film Diablo, starring Scott Adkins and Marko Zaror, for which Ernesto and I had a wonderful in-depth chat. That interview is also on the website, behindthelensonline.net. Check it out if you haven't heard it. For Affinity, Brandon explained that in designing the visual grammar and color palette, and you're going to hear him discuss all of this and lay it out for you, he and Nicolo wanted to represent Bangkok not just as a stand-in for another city, which so often happens in Brandon's films. He loves shooting in Thailand. but to authentically show its diverse facets. Bangkok is Bangkok, from working class neighborhoods to extreme wealth. The color tones and visual style were intentionally crafted to set the mood and, importantly, to place the film slightly, quote-unquote, out of time, if you will, as if set in the near future. The palette and the camera work reinforce both emotional beats and the narrative, with the collaboration between Brandon and Nico focusing on making the visuals integral to the storytelling and atmosphere. An interesting aspect of this conversation revolves around the use of science fiction as a lens to explore deep philosophical questions, such as the nature of self-identity, the impact of memory and experience, and what fundamentally makes someone who they are. You'll hear Brandon mention motifs like what makes you, you, and his considerations, whether it's the body, the soul, or lived experience that defines a person. By placing characters in situations with a sci-fi overtone, such as experiencing someone's whole life in a single room or contemplating the consequences of altering past events, Affinity explores these themes in a way typical action films don't. This philosophical approach is woven into the narrative through both story twists, and there's some good ones, and the emotional journeys of the characters, creating a unique blend of genre and introspection. As you'll hear Brandon discuss, and as many of you may already know, editing is his passion. He is picky. Editing is key. And with Affinity, editing is so important to him, and having Ernesto was key to the editing process. Brandon has some great anecdotes in here about working with Ernesto on the editing. So I think you're going to enjoy those and get a chuckle out of them. We also dive into the emotional dynamic between the characters of Bruno and Athena, which really showcases a previously unseen depth in Marko's acting. He is more than just martial arts and action. And I'm so happy that you're all going to get to experience that now when you see the film. And then how about some lighter, even comedic moments from, of all people, Louis Mandylor? Something we've not seen in any of his collaborations with Brandon until now. It's fabulous. Affinity is a film with unique visual style, emotional depth, and some very unexpected twists. So take a listen as director Brandon Slagle talks about it all. I am beyond impressed with this one, Brandon. This is
Thank you.
So different from what you've done before in terms of your visual tonal bandwidth. My God, the vibrancy and use of color is stunning. Absolutely stunning. And even the story is just amazing. It's very, very rooted in character. All of your films are rooted in character, but this one has a different tenor because of the relationship between Bruno and Athena.
Yeah, and I can't necessarily take credit for the story in this one. This was something that Marko had for, I think when we first spoke, 6 or 7 years. Like, he had it since the middle of the 2000s. And he's someone that, you know, you see him in Undisputed, John Wick and all that, but he's like a big sci-fi fan and really wants to grow his own brand. And so this was always meant to be a vehicle to really showcase him in a different way than you see him as usually the villain and things like that.
Yes.
Even in the Machete movie he was in, he was a villain.
Yeah. That's how you know, in the films he's recently done with Scott Adkins. Besides John Wick, he is a villain. Diablo.
Yeah.
He was the villain to Scott's protagonist.
Yes.
Even a Prisoner of War. So, you know, seeing Marko like this, I had no idea he had much depth, that he had this much depth to his acting ability.
Yeah, he's actually a very, so Brahim, who was the villain Krieger at the end, who choreographed Monkey Man and Fight or Flight and some stuff, described Marko And I mean, this is a very simple definition, but it really applies to him as a gentle giant. He's one of the most just like decent people in entertainment I've ever known. And is very self-aware about his health, his mental state, everything. So even just talking to him the first time that I did, I could see those things in there. And he was really up to the challenge when it came to playing the quieter scenes, the more vulnerable scenes. Like the tears that he sheds in the movie are real. They're not from any type of mist or Visine.
Oh, yeah. No, those were real.
Yeah.
Those were real.
And the second tier, the one when he's looking up the history of a certain plot point, that was maybe one of the most fulfilling. I think we spent the take. I mean, the way it's cut, it's maybe, the whole sequence is like 3 minutes, but we really got deep in there and shot, like the take was maybe 10 minutes.
Wow.
And we nailed it. And that was maybe the best moment he and I had on that whole shoot, amongst many moments where we were happy, but we were like, yes, we really did it.
It's a very emotional film. Now, what I love is you've got Niccolo back as cinematographer, so you're working with him again.
Yep.
And what's really nice about Niccolo is not only does he know how to work with you, and you two have a great shorthand, but he has shot Marko before in Diablo, Prisoner of War. So he really knows how to shoot Marko as well as Mandalore.
Actually, Diablo was shot after Affinity.
Really?
Affinity kind of got him the job for Diablo. They had Marco, Scott, and Ernesto had been working on that story for a bit, and Marco's like, "Hey, this DP we just used for Affinity was great. Let's get him out." And so they flew him to Brazil from Thailand to shoot that. So good for him. He's really starting to get a lot of good stuff. Like he shot a movie for Tony Jaa. He shot Prisoner of War.
Yep.
And he's done some other things. So it's only the beginning for him.
I love what he did with Into the Deep for Christian Sesma and the Sharks. Yeah. But then here again, in addition to Niccolo's work, got Ernesto editing this film. And I love Ernesto's editing. What he did with Green Ghost, the film wasn't that fantastic, but his work is excellent. Fist of the Condor, which he also did with Marko. Invincible, which he did with Marko. The editing is so sharp on this one. So to see all of you working together, Marko, Mandalore, Ernesto, this is, Niccolo, this is fantastic.
So many O's there.
Yeah,
Ernesto is a very, humble guy.
Yeah.
And editing is something that I really press hard on in these movies. There's more than one movie where it's a pseudonym that may or may not be me. That or I give 450 notes. This one, I think I maybe gave 20 notes. Ernesto really understands action. He understands how to put it together. He knows when to adhere to the rules of editing, and he knows when to break them. And he's fantastic with pace. This tells a really broad story in a relatively short period of time.
It does.
And I don't know, there could have been a different version of this that had more backstory to it and everything, but since it's from Marko/Bruno's point of view, there's no need for that.
Right.
So from perspective, I don't really know what else you would put in it unless you just made, elaborated on scenes that would just be, overkill.
We have every bit of backstory that we need to know, especially about Marko, thanks to the montage at the opening of the film.
Yeah.
That's all we need to know about Marko and his backstory. And then we get to move forward. And because we saw that, now we can see how that has impacted his approach to the world and to life now.
Yeah, I think it's a relatable thing, the PTSD side of it, where if you haven't experienced it yourself, you know someone who has, and so that kind of instantly humanizes him. And a lot of people can relate to the idea of or having lost your closest relative or friend.
Yeah.
And I actually think the script is very kind of simple and straightforward in these scenes, but the performers, with Lewis, there's almost, you could see like almost an entire Hangover type movie that's just Lewis chasing Marko around Bangkok and getting him out of trouble. But you don't need to show that, because this is sort of the climax of that pushes the story ahead. Like, you know that Lewis's character Joe cares for him, but he knows there's only so much he can do. Yeah. And at the end of the day, Bruno is the one that has to save himself or allow himself to be saved. Mm-hmm. The same with Fitch, that's played by Brooke Hens.
She's wonderful.
Everyone seems to love her. Like, even the screening that we had in August at Big Bad Film Fest, there were people that came and they were asking about the girl, you know, because people always say the girl. And I thought they meant Jane that plays Athena at first. And then they're like, no, the muscular one. I'm like, oh, yeah, she was in Zack Snyder's Justice League and stuff like that, and is a CrossFit champion. And people are really gravitating towards her, and I think it's because she kind of plays I think the first time you really see their dynamic outside of the backstory is when they FaceTime, and you see that she's sort of like the bad influence friend that also has your back. Yeah. Which also people relate to, and that makes a good little family dynamic between the three of them.
Well, and of course, with Lewis, something that we see from him here is he has a lot of lighter moments. We're not used to seeing him have lighter moments, even with a comedic bent at certain points with his delivery.
And especially in stuff I do with him.
I've never seen it in stuff he does with you. But it's so wonderful. This is really a refreshing look at your work as a director to bring all of these elements to life, Brandon. And I'm curious, because the visuals are so incredible in this film, and not just the fight scenes, but also your opening titles. It's a visual explosion of color and beauty and slow motion. And then you counter it with some beautiful shots on the river, in the boat, very ethereal shots. And we get to the third act of the film, and there is intensity with color, oranges and yellows we haven't really seen before. We've seen bits and pieces leading up to that. Your color palette is very specific here. A lot of red and green. Initially, a lot of blue, kind of metaphoric for the past, reds and greens, and you pepper that with oranges and yellows and then go into an explosion of that. So I'm curious about your conversations with Niccolo about developing the visual grammar and the color.
Well, first and foremost, what was great to me on this one is, like all of the other things I've done in Thailand, it was usually Thailand or Bangkok standing in for something else. Right. Like a flood, it was standing in for Louisiana. So, you know, this is the first time I got to show parts of Bangkok, and not necessarily just downtown, but also the very, I guess you would say, working class part of Bangkok. And, you know, you see a night market in it. You see the river where Bruno lives, and then you see the extreme wealth of Bangkok too, which a lot of Asia actually is. You have areas that are almost poverty, and then areas that are futuristic, like within close proximity to each other. Bangkok itself is almost like, you know, LA and Blade Runner or something. It's kind of an amazing city, and I hope to be able to show it even more in the future. But it was really just a matter of the mood and setting it. The idea that Marko and I had is this movie doesn't necessarily take place like today, but say very, very slightly incrementally in the future. So the color tones and everything, aside from reinforcing the mood and emotions and the story arc, also is meant to enforce that it's out of time a little bit. Mm-hmm. I could go like kind of wax poetic about that, but maybe another time.
Yes, when Leaf doesn't schedule us so tightly.
Yes.
But it's the color speaks volumes here. But also, I love what you and Niccolo have done with the visual grammar, with the camera and the blocking, particularly in Joe's restaurant, the open-air restaurant, and that construction. Did you have to build out that set, or was that already there?
So that was actually there. So there's augmentations, of course. Like,
sure.
There's one scene that I decided to keep as a single shot. That's just the two of them kind of bickering, Bruno and Joe. And that kitchen we set up. The layout and some of the decor in the restaurant we set up, and obviously the things we broke we set up. But other than that, it was kind of there. I think it was owned by an Englishman who had, as so many people do, he met a Thai girl and retired there and opened a restaurant.
I love the camera work. Especially when we get into the fight. A lot of it is kept very intimate. This film has a lot of very intimate moments, be it Bruno and Athena at Bruno's quote-unquote shack or in the restaurant, even in the open-air market. You keep the shots a close two-shot, actually. So we make
sure they know the geography, but also, since it's meant to be kind of from the point of view and the characters, and there's really so very few main characters. Like, a lot of my other things are ensembles and stuff like Arena Wars. Even Saipan, in a way, is kind of an ensemble. Mm-hmm. But this felt good to really just kind of get in there, and you're right there with these people. And that's kind of how I like to shoot fights anyway. I like to keep it to where you can see it, but also the protagonist, or in some cases when the antagonist is winning, that's who you're side by side with. So yeah, it was really just kind of an extension of things that I like to do anyway.
It does. This film sets you apart from your prior works. And it shows a different side of you, Brandon. A different side of your talents.
There's a bit of I think a review I read said that there's an air of melancholy in a lot of it, which is not something I've been doing much of lately. Things like say like Arena Wars and stuff is basically satire or comedy, or things are very quippy. Like Breakout is almost Breakout and Saipan in a way are almost written like Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. But this one, and I wouldn't call this melancholy. It has great poignancy to it. Not melancholy, poignancy. And
I'm gonna use that word. I like that.
Melancholy is very downbeat, but poignancy, there's something in the heart. The heart touches this story that makes it meaningful, that makes it poignant, not sad, but very meaningful. And we really see that come to fruition in that third act. We're not going to give away any spoilers, but that third act, wow, we get reveals in there that knock me off my chair.
There's a couple of people that have said that kind of comes out of nowhere and that it's an acquired taste, the twist. But to me, that's why you have a twist.
Yes.
And it's better that it doesn't necessarily feel like the obvious answer to the entire thing, or to the entire story. And especially given the point of view from the movie, being that it's told from, Bruno's perspective.
That's right.
That's how that would happen if you were experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a surprise. I loved it. I love that twist. Certain things are running through my mind, but that twist, when it landed, boy, did it land. And to see the fallout from that twist, really just beautiful, which is not what people expect in one of your films.
There's the scene I kind of mentioned earlier where we have the tears where Bruno is experiencing essentially someone's life inside of a single room. And to me, that brings up questions, even though it's not necessarily, explored in terms of dialogue, but it brings up, the idea of what is it that makes you you? Yeah. Is it the body? Is it the soul? Is it the experience? What is it? Mm-hmm. If you remove an event from your life, are you the same person? And that's just in general a type of motif that I like exploring anyway. So I'm glad that I got to do that in something with science fiction overtones and ass-kicking.
Look, you've got great metaphor happening here. You're asking philosophical questions. There is beautiful poignancy from beginning to end. And then visually, it is a vibrant stunner. It's fabulous, Brandon. It's fabulous.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it, especially as someone who has seen the recent track record and led up to this one.
And if it sucked, I would tell you that too.
I don't hesitate in saying that either. It just depends on who the audience is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's 12:30. You have to move on to your next interview.
Yes, I do. And of course, the traffic is breaking up now, and now I can move.
Thanks, Brandon. And that was Brandon Slagle talking about Affinity. And you can see Affinity right now on all the usual streaming channels. And as I said before, it's so exciting to see Brandon's continued growth and expansion as a storyteller and director with Affinity. I can't wait to see, now that he has this new growth under his belt, I can't wait to see what's coming down the road from him. But now, another director who has spread his visionary wings and stepped somewhat outside of the box from what we have come to expect from him, Neil Marshall. I've long loved Neil's work, going back some 20 plus years to The Descent and Centurion, and up through his episodic television work with Black Sails, Game of Thrones, Westworld, and more. The last time that Neil and I got to sit down and talk was, can you believe it, for Centurion. It's been forever. So for both of us, it was really great to get to catch up now with Compulsion. Now, Neil is known for action and thrills. You think about Black Sails, you think about Game of Thrones, you think about Centurion. But now he delves into a genre meld that we haven't seen from him before. The psychological, erotic, giallo thriller with a film noir vibe, complete with a 21st century femme fatale, murder mysteries, an exotic location, and plenty of bloodshed. Compulsion is, to be blunt, positively delicious. Inspired by Neil's admiration for erotic thrillers of the 80s and 90s, such as Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct, something woefully missing from cinema today, he set out to blend the sensuous, suspenseful style of those films with an homage to giallo, a genre of, for those that don't know, it's a genre of stylish Italian thriller horror movies, resulting in Compulsion's unique mix of erotic thriller and murder mystery elements. The inspiration to set the story in a visually distinct locale was also influenced by Neil's desire to film somewhere bright and warm. You look at a lot of the films he's done, they're not in bright, sunny, warm places, which ultimately led him to Malta, which further shaped the film's visual and narrative style. Written and directed by Neil, Compulsion focuses on the story of a young woman's visit to her stepfather's villa in Malta that spirals into danger when she's targeted by con artists and a violent murder forces her into a deadly cover-up. As a local detective closes in, trust cracks, dark secrets are exposed. The film stars Anna Maria Sikluka, Charlotte Kirk, Zach McGowan, Julia Garrietti, and Harvey Dean. And I gotta tell you, Neil always has strong women in his films. Think of The Descent. Think of Axel Carolyn in Centurion. Anna Maria, Charlotte, and Julia. Oh, incredible. They are each a powerhouse in this film. Now, as we delve into this production, we discuss the film's strong female characters and equally strong performances, and I do believe this is a trademark of Neil's. We also discuss the blend of erotic thriller and giallo elements. Of course, in addition to the three leading ladies and their casting, we also talk about him bringing in Zach McGowan and Harvey Dean for a bit of male testosterone. Now, Zach McGowan, you might recognize him from Black Sails, also from the older Captain Morgan commercials. He was Captain Morgan in the Captain Morgan rum commercials. And Zach has been on the live Behind the Lens show before. And that is also on the Behind the Lens Online.net website. So if you missed that a few years ago when Zach was on live with me, check it out. As you're going to hear, Neil and his cinematographer, Ali Assad, leverage Malta's unique architecture and light to paint a rich, lustrous tapestry on which his actors get to play. An interesting element of this conversation involves Neil's insistence on practical in-camera effects, which impacted the shooting location. Now, as many shoots in ancient or centuries-old as with many of these, happen in Downton Abbey. If you have checked out my interviews with the cinematographer from the first Downton Abbey. As with many of these shoots, quite often extra care must be taken with the properties in the homes used for filming, often requiring false walls and ceilings in order not to damage the existing interior structure. Like you can't hang chandeliers, you can't tap into existing beams of a building. If you've got these beautiful 500-year-old wood walls, you're not putting a nail in those. So that is always a consideration when you're location scouting. You have to know in advance what you want in terms of the production design to find. You can't just go and find a location and get there and then find out, well, I can't put a nail in the wall. I can't hang lights from the ceiling. So you've got to have all this planned out in advance. Now, Neil lucked out with Compulsion and found a perfect stone residence to serve as Evie's millionaire father's home, and one which the owners weren't opposed to being blood-soaked on the stone walls and marble floors, which was particularly important for one 6-minute scene in particular. There was a fight sequence was filmed in one shot. It was one take, one shot, to preserve continuity and intensity. And it's very key. It's at the 53-minute mark, I believe. So be on the lookout for it when you watch this film. And as you'll hear Neil describe, despite putting down a covering on the marble flooring, and this is old marble. This isn't brand new, fresh off the showroom floor. These homes and structures on Malta and the architecture, the stone, this is all old. So you have to be careful, and you've got to protect it when you can and when you need to. But for this particular fight sequence, it resulted in the marble floor becoming extremely slippery with fake blood, which also meant the fight had to be carefully choreographed to keep all the actors down on the ground to avoid injuries and make the scene feel like mud wrestling with blood. And it really does. The actors did all their own stunt work in the fight sequences, and it's incredible. It's incredible to watch. But this also impacted how Ali Assad could light and lens the scene. Where can you put the camera? Where are you going to be able to pick up, get close-ups? How are you going to do this without getting blood soaking the lens of your camera, or having the camera go slip-sliding around on the bloody floor? So Neil has interesting information about how this was pulled off for this film. And other similar scenes with practical effects also impacted the camera's approach. And Neil talks about shooting erotic sequences, something completely new to him. Another key aspect of this film is the sound design and the synth score, which subconsciously adds tension and terror to the unfolding murder mysteries. And of course, there are some plot twists that will have you jump out of your chair. So take a listen as Neil Marshall talks all about all of this and Compulsion. Hi, Neil.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm fine. I can't believe it has been 15 years since we sat down and talked about Centurion.
Oh, that makes me feel old.
Makes me feel old. Yeah, we did The Descent, and then we had an incredible interview on Centurion. And now we wait all these years, and we finally get to chat again and about Compulsion.
Well, isn't that fantastic?
Well, I think it's fantastic because, as is true to you and the stories you tell, you've got very strong women, strong female characters in multiple aspects in this film. You have a way with portraying female characters and showing their strengths, but also showing how those strengths can be a weakness.
Yes.
There are few directors that can pull that off as well as you do, Neil. And that really stands out for me with Compulsion. But then you also go and you do something totally different for you. We're getting a sensual erotica giallo thriller here.
I like to change things up a bit and try something different.
You sure did with this one. But I love the murder mystery aspect, the whole visual composition, the visual tonal bandwidth, as well as your visual grammar, just feed into that whole idea of giallo. And of course, you give us plenty of what we all love to see in murder mystery movies, blood and murder. And you do it all with this beautiful wrapping of your visuals. From what I understand, Charlotte worked with you on the story. You did the script. Where did the idea for this tale come from?
It originated from a conversation that I had with a distributor who was saying that there was a gap in the marketplace for kind of a return to the erotic thrillers that we had in the the 80s and 90s that I loved so much at the time. Was the Fatal Attractions and the Basic Instincts and films like that. And so I thought, I've always enjoyed those kind of films, so I just thought I'd give one of those a go. So that was kind of the seed that was planted there. And then that kind of merged in with sort of giallo as I was writing it. Was like thinking this is a great opportunity to sort of do a homage to giallo slashers as well at the same time, and combine the two somehow. And then the palette of it all, that kind of emerged. I'm always telling myself that so many films like Centurion, for example, I end up filming them in really cold, wet, miserable locations because that's the nature of the story. And this one is specifically designed to sort of like set it on some nice sunny Mediterranean kind of coastline somewhere, but I didn't really know where. I just thought that was going to be a nicer place to go and make a film, and ended up in Malta. And originally the intention was to try and make Malta look like Italy or France or somewhere like that. But when I got there, and it's the first time I've been there, when I got there and I kind of absorbed the culture and absorbed the architecture and the place as well, I decided that we might as well just set it on Malta. And then we don't have to disguise anything. It's an amazing, beautiful place. It has a unique kind of architecture to it, incredible harbors and things like that. So we just thought we'd shoot it as Malta. And then I think that the light that I found there gave it this rich texture and color, and then we enhanced that with the grade and the DP or whatever to make it a really bright, kind of vivid film.
Yeah, isn't that light spectacular at Malta?
It is.
Every filmmaker that I know that has shot in Malta, and every cinematographer, we end up talking about the light because it is so unique, and the grain is so different in terms of what you get in the sunlight particles. When you look at it, I think it's to do
with like all the buildings being that certain kind of color of sandstone. I think the sun bounces off those buildings everywhere, and you get that warmth and the light. It's just incredible. Now,
I didn't know that this was even set in Malta when I started watching the film. And I love Malta. Years ago, Joan Carr-Wiggin did a film there. She's done a couple others in Malta as well since then. And the Department of Tourism actually pulled from my review of the film what I said about Malta on screen.
Oh, fantastic.
So as Compulsion opens, with that opening shot, I'm like, oh my God, he shot this in Malta. Because it's the water, the sandstone color of the harbor edge, just stunning. Yeah. But I love how you use so many parts of the town where you are on Malta. You and your DP, you and Ali, really incorporate all of that into the story itself. So we really get a feel of logistics for these unsolved murders that are happening. Was that difficult to execute in terms of selecting the specific locations and traveling from point A to B to C to D?
Well, I suppose that's the one best thing that Malta has. I mean, it's small. So we managed to get to see an awful lot of it. When we were scouting locations, we managed to sort of take in a lot of locations and the flavor of the place very, very quickly and really absorb that vibe that it has. Although it's small, it's not necessarily easy to get around because they have a lot of these narrow roads with walls, and trying to get your crew trucks and stuff down some of these roads is a bit tricky. But on the whole, it doesn't take that long to get from A to B there. So that enabled us to really be careful in choosing our locations and where we wanted to go on the island, and just, I don't know, trying to encompass the whole place in one film is not, but we did want to pack it all in there and get as much of the flavor as possible.
You really did, and I love that. Essentially, your scene changes, your interstitials, you celebrate and showcase, give us great aerials of the island, so that everybody really gets a sense of its quote-unquote isolation, surrounded by water, and the fortresses, which really metaphorically play into this story. I have to say, in terms of Evie and Diana, both of them have their own fortresses that are up. So it's a very fitting place, which leads me to the house, Evie's house, her stepfather's house. How did you find that? And I'm really curious because I know all of these structures are very old, and typically when you go in, you have to put things up so you don't harm the walls, you don't hurt the floors, you don't do anything to the lighting. But here, you've got practical effects happening, because there's no way that 53-minute mark three-way fight in the kitchen was CGI. That was a practical fight. How did you find a home that somebody would let you pour buckets of blood on?
That was so. The film that I made just before this, called Duchess, also had a big house in it, and only after we'd agreed to film there, and we were limited on options, so we had to film in this place because it was the only house big enough for the story. Where we told that we weren't allowed to get blood anywhere in the house. So thankfully that was just some people getting shot, so it wasn't much, and we did that with CG. But when we came to Compulsion, and I knew I was going to do that 5-minute sequence in the kitchen, I insisted that whatever location we found, we were going to do practical effects in. So it was up to the location people to find someone that was willing to let us do it, but also to the effects people or whatever, they put stuff on the floor to prevent the blood from staining it. So there was a lot of prep went into it. But it was something I insisted on, was it's going to be practical. So let's make sure we're able to do what we need to do in that location and not get into trouble.
As I watched that, it was like watching a mud wrestling match, but with blood in place of the mud.
That was exactly the vibe I was going for. So we sat down early on and had a production meeting. And in the script, it just said, it was like at one line maybe, that, this attack happens and somebody gets killed. And I was in this production meeting with the stunt guy, and we got to that scene, and the stunt guy said, so what do you want for this sequence? Like maybe, I don't know, a 10-second, 20-second fight? And I thought about it for a while, and I said, no, I'd like a 5-minute sequence, and we're going to shoot it in one shot, and we're going to use practical effects. So can you come up with that? And he did, and the cast and the stunt people rehearsed it. And we figured out how to do the blood practically. And so the only thing we ended up adding in was the blades of the knife. But everything else was practical. which, you know, set quite a lot of challenges, but it was great challenges as a filmmaker. And, you know, for the actors as well. And we literally had one shot at doing it. We rehearsed it so many times, but we had one take because we knew that once that blood was all over the floor, it was going to take hours to clean up, and we simply didn't have time for it. So it came to the end of the day, and we were like, okay, this is it. So we did like 2 takes dry with the camera, making sure the camera knew what it was doing. And then we went for it and did the final take. And also I knew as well that on a marble floor with all that blood, I said it's going to turn into an ice rink. So the fight has to be designed so that everybody's kind of down on the ground and on their knees and slipping and sliding and falling over each other. Because I thought if anybody tries to stand up here, they're going to, you know, have an accident. So it worked to keep it all down on the ground. And by the end of it, of course, everybody was just completely covered in blood.
Oh yeah. How much blood did you go through? Do we have a gallon count?
I don't know the exact amount, but it was an awful lot. I know there was like 4 huge canisters that were rigged up to go one at a time throughout the sequence. So, I mean, it was liters of the stuff.
Wow. That scene is so well done, and I love the camera work on that because while the camera's pulled back to get all 3 of them, so you've really got a mid 2 shot happening. Yep. There is still, the camera comes down so that we are almost floor level with Evie as she's crawling, and as Diana as she's crawling, and with Reese as his hair is flopping all over, covered in blood.
Yep.
The camera angles, this could have very easily been something you throw on sticks, down low, and leave it there, but you didn't. So I really appreciate the thought that went into shooting that sequence that you and Ali designed. Really well done.
Yeah, no, he did a fantastic job. And yeah, it was just a case of like having the camera down low and just doing this very slow pullback on the sequence to then reveal the gun in the foreground. It was all part of the plan. It
worked so well, and I was riveted. I didn't realize that almost 6 minutes had gone by. As I was watching that scene, I was so engrossed in it. And something that ties in, because you got a really slow burn coming up to that 53-minute mark, and that fight in the kitchen. You got a really slow burn, but something that also helps with this burn and that really stands out in tandem with this fight is your sound and your sound design. During that fight, you have the most incredible sound at like the 55, 56-minute mark, that it's almost like a bass tea kettle that's whistling, ready to explode. I just fell in love with that. Sound effect.
Well, yeah, we had a fantastic team of sound designers, a fantastic composer that, you know, really helped give us that giallo vibe with the synth score and all these underlying sound effects that just ramping up the tension, particularly during that sequence as well. So yes, very, very important stuff. The sound is, you know, layering it onto these movies is vital.
And of course, after that, then everything really speeds up. Yet quite a number of scenes are done in slow motion. You let everybody breathe, which is nice. But you keep the pedal to the metal with the tension. How difficult was?
Yeah, no, that's the hope.
Yeah, I mean, how difficult was it when you were editing this to give us moments of the erotic languidity between Evie and Diana, but keep the pedal to the metal with the freneticism and the energy of our detective and the inspector, because it's a fine balance that you're walking here to, let us languish, and then also biting our nails as to who done it with all of these murders that keep racking up.
Yeah, well, it's kind of complex, that part, but it is, you can only ramp up the tension so far. You have to, at some point, kind of release the valve so you get toward the end of the story, and then you can go, hell for leather toward the end of the story then. So, the tension has to sustain to a certain point. the big reveal, and then it's like, well, okay, now we know this. We're gonna get going now. But then understanding, there's further twists and turns after that. So much of it was in the script. I didn't need to deviate that much in the edit from the script. So that helped enormously. But editing is just something I absolutely love. It's just that next stage of filmmaking. I love being on set with the crew and the cast, and then getting in on your own and seeing the footage and start putting it together with the sound effects and the music and all that kind of stuff. It's a whole other process, and it's one I equally love. So, yeah, trying to manipulate. I mean, that is the whole thing of editing. You're trying to manipulate the audience. You're trying to get them to feel something by the cuts and the rate of the cuts, and whether you use a cut or a dissolve or something else. It's like everything is about emotion and feeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, you definitely manipulate it so well here. I got to tell you, Neil. Now,
Thank you.
Especially, you've got some reveals in here that just blew my mind, that I did not expect. And we're not going to say what the reveals are, but boy, oh boy, we get to the hour 20 mark, and there's a huge reveal. And I just sat there staring at the screen. It's like, oh my God, because you have also built up so much ambiguity with the characters that at any point in the film, we're thinking, okay, it's this person. Okay, it's that person. Okay, it's that person. Hey, could it be the detective? Just to spite her father, who's the police chief. You throw so much shade on so many people that it's just a real puzzle. And it's delicious to watch. Delicious.
Well, absolutely, that's the plan. You've got to keep them guessing till the end, and also showing people's thought process, and that's not always it's not always a trustworthy narrator. It's the false narrator. In some cases, it's like, we're seeing that version of it. Is that the right version, or is it just her thoughts? And then eventually you're getting bits and pieces that go, oh, okay, well, actually, maybe it's all of it together.
Just so well put together. Now, how challenging was your casting here? I have to tell you, starting off, Charlotte Kirk, she gives a 21st century vibe to the term femme fatale. Charlotte is fantastic as Diana.
Yeah, I mean, that was when we conceived the whole story together, that was the intention, that she was always going to play Diana, and sort of kind of wrote it around her strengths in a way. And then trying to find somebody that could play opposite that and be the sort of main focus of the story, was, when we managed to get Anna Maria, having seen her in the 365 Days movies, was like, I never thought we'd actually get her, but she came on board. She was absolutely fantastic to work with, lovely person, and gave looks astonishing on camera and gave an amazing performance. So that worked really well. And then we got Julia as the cop, as the detective, and she's a fierce Italian woman. Like I found that, for me, her best moments when she got angry, and like we kept talking about it, is like that, bring out that like fierce Italian inside you. Like that's what I want to see. And she was brilliant too.
Yeah, Julia, I just was so impressed with her, and I loved her chemistry playing opposite. I think it's Harvey Dean, who played Inspector Dennis.
Yes, yeah.
Crawford. Watching the two of them, and she's constantly, I told you not to talk. I told you not to talk.
Yeah.
I love that dynamic. She is relentless. And
yeah, he's kind of mellow and a little bit naive. But he's also kind of seen some of this before. He's been down this road before, so he doesn't feel like he has too much to prove. She's desperately out to prove herself, and she like constantly snaps at him and puts him down all the time, which is great. It's a good dynamic between each other.
Yeah, I love watching the two of them, and I love it when the three women are all together, because you never know when you get three women together what's going to happen. So that could go any number of ways.
Well, it works well because they're also different, I think.
Very much so. And each one is essentially a loose cannon. Each one in that beautiful. The masquerade scene is stunning, Neil. Absolutely stunning. How challenging was it to orchestrate and choreograph that scene? Because it's so beautifully done. And it's high tension.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big location. We found this amazing house. That was a location where we couldn't damage anything because it's quite an important old house, and it is still lived in. So we had to move quite a lot of furniture around, and then turning the entrance lobby into the main party scene and things like that was tricky. You got a lot of lighting issues. You got a lot of extras, characters. We got our casting agent to find some really interesting performers, like cabaret performers and things like that on the island, to come along and just take part in it. Everybody seemed to have a really fun time. We were constantly playing music to set the tone and the mood. And yeah, it was a long night. That was just choreographing all that. It wasn't easy, but yeah, fantastic.
And then you have that incredible bathroom scene in the middle of the masquerade. Again, another challenge for Ali in terms of camera work and lighting and space.
Yeah, a small location full of mirrors is never easy. But again, doing a completely practical effect. So yeah, that was tough.
Ali and his camera team is just wow with these small spaces that you chose to shoot in. I'm just absolutely blown away by it. Now, I am curious about, I think you had perfect casting for Reese as Zach McGowan. Mm-hmm. I think Zach is so underrated as an actor. Everybody thinks of him as the Captain Morgan rum guy.
Yeah.
But he is absolutely a perfect match with Charlotte's Diana and a counter to Anna's Evie. What led you to Zach for the part of Reese?
Well, I had worked with him on Black Sails. I directed the pilot for Black Sails. Mm-hmm. The first two episodes of Black Sails. So that's where I first worked with him, and we became really good friends on that shoot. And I'd been trying to work with him ever since on various projects, but it just hadn't worked out. And with this one, again, I kind of thought he fit the bill. He's always had something about him. Yeah. He's got a dangerous kind of edge to him, which is great. But he's also got a sense of humor, and he's kind of warm at the same time. Like, I know him as a very warm, friendly person, but like the characters he plays are very kind of dark and dangerous quite often. So that combination of elements was just perfect for him, as written. And yeah, he knocked it out of the park. He's a great guy.
Well, he's very dark and dangerous here in Compulsion, but also there's a lightness. He does bring, a slight snarky comedic edge at certain moments, which is it cuts through some of the tension that is building. He
has a mischievous kind of edge to him.
Yes.
Which comes out at the dinner table. That stuff is fun.
Yes. Now, I do have to ask you, you mentioned synth for the scoring, but what were you looking for from your composer, from Paul, in terms of the score beyond synth? Or was synth always your initial thought for what you might want? How did the scoring come into play here?
I was always after synth. As soon as, based on all the Giallo films that I'd seen, I was looking for something that would very much fit with that tone. So I wanted to go for synth, but a certain type of synth that isn't contemporary synth. It isn't, kind of drum and bassy kind of synth. It's more creepy, atmospheric synth that you used to get back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s and those kind of films, because a synth score back then was a lot cheaper than an orchestra. So, getting a guy with a synthesizer gave it just gives those kind of lower budget films a real vibe, and I was trying to tap into that with this very much so.
Well, you definitely did, and even making notes as I was watching the film, and I even had in here horror. Synth equals horror.
It does.
I
think synth can create really creepy, disturbing kind of moods for a film, and that's absolutely all I wanted.
And you absolutely achieved it. So I've got one last question for you, Neil. Now that you have delivered yet another completely different iteration of a Neil Marshall film, will you go back and revisit these themes, the whole psychological thriller, the giallo, the erotica? Will you revisit this again, or will you move on to something else that's new and exciting at this stage of your career?
I am going to be moving on to something else. I don't feel the need to do. I've kind of got that out of my system now. It's fine. And to be honest, if I never do another love scene in the film, I'll be happy. They're really complex, not particularly thrilling. You know, they're not a lot of fun to do. I'd much rather be doing fight sequences than love scenes. All told, it was absolutely necessary for this film, but I've done that now. I don't need to do it again. So I'm going back to horror and action and sci-fi and Lord knows what else. I have many things to do.
Does that mean that we might see another form of The Descent? I mean, we do have the 20th anniversary happening.
You do. I don't know about that one. It's something that I'm toying with, just as I'm toying with a potential revisit to the Dog Soldier's world.
Ooh.
But I also have various things. I have a horror western. I have a sci-fi movie that I'm working on. So yeah, plenty of options.
Oh my God. Well, whatever it is, I will be there to watch it, Neil. I have so enjoyed all of the television work that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Over the years. And, you know, unfortunately, I don't cover that much television. I would like to cover more, but it doesn't keep me from watching and enjoying what you do and taking note of it, such as with Black Sails and that first episode. That first episode is very important. It sets the tone for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
But
just getting a chance to do a big pirate show with pirate galleons and stuff as a filmmaker, that's like a dream come true.
Yes. So that's right in your wheelhouse. Because pirates are not nice and sweet. Pirates have a lot of violence and anger and action.
They do.
Neil, this has been so lovely getting to chat with you again. I hope we don't go 15 years before we talk again.
I hope not.
And I cannot wait to see what you give us next. I love Compulsion.
Thank you.
It's beautiful to look at on multiple levels. It is very well cut. It is very well shot. The performances are wonderful, especially Charlotte's work as Diana and Julia's work as the detective, as Claudia. Just so well done, and I have to watch it again.
Okay, fantastic. I'm so happy.
Neil, thank you so much. And you go have a wonderful rest of your evening in England, in the UK.
Will do. Have a great day wherever you are.
Thank you, Neil. And that was writer-director Neil Marshall discussing Compulsion. And Compulsion is currently available digitally and on demand. And I think there might still be some theaters in the country showing the film on the big screen as well. So check it out. But at the very least, this is a great film to sit at home at night in the dark and watch. Have a couple drinks with you. Maybe some snacks. Maybe not. But drinks. Maybe a friend. But I encourage you to see it. So that is all the time we have today. Many thanks, as always, to my friend Brandon Slagle and to the wonderful Neil Marshall. It was so fantastic to get to connect with Neil and talk about Compulsion. And we have vowed to not let another 15 years or so go by before we chat again. So check out the respective films, Affinity and Compulsion. And I'll be back next week with more interesting interviews and films to discuss, one of which I'm going to mention to you right now. It is an important film. It is a magnificently done film. It is called Truth and Treason, and is based on a true story out of World War II. And you could lift that, the events of that film, and the 3 young boys in the film, and just drop it right now into what we are experiencing and living in today. It's chilling from that regard. From that point, it is a cautionary tale, if nothing else. Should be lessons learned from history. But it is just magnificent. So that is it. Just opened in theaters on Friday. So please, if you get a chance, check it out. I should have my interview with the filmmaker, with Matt Whitaker, up hopefully this week. So you can hear all about that. But until next week, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.